It's a really good question. It's something that I've actually been debating ever since I've been on this journey. What I've come to is, so I do not currently have a certification. I went through the CTI curriculum. I mentioned earlier that I think is a phenomenal opportunity to learn, but I think an amazing program, and I met a lot of incredible people. Both have been really helpful for me as I build out this coaching business and made me significantly better coach. So I think the training in and of itself, finding the right training program, and I can speak, to the Coactive Training Institute, I don't think I could be truly making the impact I am today without that program.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host Rexhen, and today's guest is Suken Jain, a former product marketing director who led an 800 million portfolio in med device and a South Asian leader with 20 plus years building high-performing cross-functional teams. Now the founder and CEO of SynergySync, Suken helps organizations and mid-career leaders make hard things easier through purpose-led coaching, crisp strategy, and the orchestration needed to turn good managers into great leaders. As a CTI-trained coach and host of the Sync Leadership Lab podcast, he blends operator rigor with people-first leadership to unlock clarity, confidence, and measurable results. And it's a pleasure for me to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Suken.
Hi, Rexhen. Thanks for having me on. Really happy to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you for coming. I wanted to learn a little bit more about your coaching business or the coaching side of your business as well. Looking at the SynergySync, looking on LinkedIn, it's been around for almost 3 years. I want to learn more about what got you to start this, what inspired you to become a coach and then start a coaching business.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I think it's always interesting hearing kind of people's origin stories of how they got started, where they got into it. For me, I think it was kind of 3 pieces coming together. One was just a natural inclination throughout my career to support others. And that's always been a part of what I've wanted to do, always just been a natural piece in in kind of my corporate life. A lot of that was supporting my team, developing just high potential talent, people who, whether they reported to me, not peers, just always being able to take the opportunity to teach others. Probably more from a mentorship angle than coaching angle, but still an element of both. And so, there's an element that's always been a part of me. And then I'd say the second piece that really kind of exposed me to coaching, and then also the power of coaching, was working with my own coach. So I started working with my own coach about 3 years ago, and was just a transformational experience. And while there's been a lot of professional impact, it started in a very personal way. Started like really understanding myself and then how to apply that to different parts of my life, both personal and professional. And like I said, incredibly impactful, both on the personal side and even on the professional side, and how I show up as a leader. With that experience, really kind of touched me in a deep way, in a meaningful way, and wanting to continue that with others. The third piece I'd say that came in is about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I went through a layoff. And it was basically kind of this 1 and 2 being the inspiration, and here number 3 being the opportunity, really gave me the chance to step back and look and say, look, I'm at this point where I've been working 20 years. I'm going to work another 20 years. Really, where do I want to spend my energy and my career? And can I make that truly part of my career? As I was exploring that, I had a couple team members of mine come to me and say, hey, would you coach me? I used to always joke with them. My retirement job was going to be career coaching. So they came to me and said, hey, would you coach me? I was like, oh my God, can I do that? And so talked to my coach and said, okay, do I need to be certified? Do I need experience? Like, how do I start coaching? And her advice just really stuck with me, which was, hey, look, getting people to pause and take 45 minutes to an hour just to self-reflect in and of itself, nobody does that, right? And so just simply getting people to do that has a ton of value. On top of that, she had a lot of confidence in me, which I appreciated. And just, her thing was like, just go out there and help people. And if you really like it, go get training at that point, explore certification, explore what you want to be able to do with that. And so I jumped into it. It was awesome, just absolutely amazing experience for me to be able to support other people. And, from that point, took my first CTI course. So if those aren't familiar with Coactive Training Institute, one of the leading coaching training organizations out there, and had a phenomenal time in that. Within a few conversations, was able to see that this can truly be a career, not just kind of a fun side hobby. And so that's when I went all in. I know you mentioned 3 years, dabbled in it for a little bit, full time in this since the beginning of 2024.
Cool. It's amazing how, for most coaches that I've interviewed, actually, it did start off by even receiving good coaching too, being part of that experience. Right now, when you think about this podcast, there's 2 audiences that are listening. So we have other coaches, career coaches, executive coaches, leadership coaches, and we also have the audiences of the guests that we've had on the show previously. So we borrowed some of their audience, and some of that audience might fit your ideal client profile. So how would you describe your ideal client profile that you typically work with? Is there a certain demographic, certain industry, certain psychographic or common goals or other commonalities you're seeing? So if they're listening, maybe they fit it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my focus is on mid-career leaders. I've coached people earlier in their career, coached people later in their career. My sweet spot is really in that mid-career leaders looking for personal and professional growth around self and team leadership. And what I mean by that is self-leadership is not necessarily about the others. It's about truly leading yourself, leading from within, leading with intentionality. Most people I work with have some sort of either challenge they're trying to overcome or opportunity or advancement that they're really going hard after. The common piece there is around they're looking for growth in one way or another. It could be personal or professional. And they realize that maybe they can do it on their own. There's these challenges and barriers that come up and get in the way that either prevent them from going all the way, or this helps them expedite the process. And so the self-leadership aspect on a lot of my clients there, it's really being able to do that and provide also my experience, often going through similar experiences that they're going through, being able to have that insight to help coach them through that. So that's the self-leadership part of it. The team leadership is probably more traditional leadership coaching. What I've seen and experienced in my career and seeing others is really around most people kind of develop their leadership style by saying, I see this leader, I don't like that. And they clump together what turns out to be their leadership style. And a lot of times it comes across like that. It's this clump together leadership. It's not kind of holistic. It's not really from a true purposeful place. So what I do with a lot of the team leaders I coach is starting really with the internal work. What is it that really drives them? What is it? What's their reason? What's their purpose of being a leader?
Mm-hmm.
And taking that forward. And so, engagements like an inner leader exercise, developing their leadership voice. What's the true intent, motivation, and what are the skills they're bringing that they want to lead with? Once they kind of develop that from within, now they could lead with intentionality. And now I'd say the hard work starts, because that's the fun exploration. And then there's the reality of what they're facing day to day, right? So are they having difficult employees that they're leading on their team, difficult people they're working with? Are there different challenges, prioritization? Is it work, feels like I could spend all day doing this, but, I either want a life myself or have a family I want to spend time with, or whatever it might be. Whatever people's challenges are, leaders, we dive headfirst into that and really address it. And it is a combination of kind of what I call pure coaching, of helping them get to the answers, because that answer is within them. And, having 20 years behind me in the corporate world, I deeply understand where people are, what the challenges they're dealing with are, both from a corporation standpoint, from people standpoint, all around. And so I share my experiences and how it might support them as well.
Amazing. And so you mentioned, so when think about the structure of this, there's also also one-on-one coaching and group coaching when you say team leadership.
So when I say team leadership, it's still one-on-one coaching, but with the intent of leading others around them, versus self-leadership is a lot more kind of personal internal work or just individual work. I do also do group coaching. That's something I've built up more recently as well. And whether that's more from a facilitation standpoint or truly, group coaching within that setting.
Okay. Because initially I thought, it could also be you're working with the leader and their team at the same time.
Yeah. What I tend to do is work with a group of leaders or work with a team. It is a little bit challenging have kind of working with the leader and their team. I think my approach is more enabling the leader to work with their team
Yeah.
and helping them that way. And by the way, with all of this, it's both one-on-one engagements directly with individuals as well as with companies. So building out business with companies has been more my focus for this year as I got more experience, dove into that. And so that's a big piece for me of how do I go in and both coach the leader for their sake, for the team's sake, for the organization's sake, because I think true leadership does support all three.
Absolutely. And right now, this is a question that mostly coaches who are listening are going to find very useful to know. And it goes to that research that I mentioned too, is when it comes to you finding your clients or them finding you marketing, we're talking marketing, what is a marketing channel that is working really well for you right now?
Yeah, my marketing is really two places. So one is LinkedIn, posting regularly, engaging with others. I know they're constantly changing their algorithm, so it's a matter of constantly trying to keep up with what's getting prioritized. But it's a matter of just getting out there and posting relevant, personal, vulnerable content is really what tends to take off on LinkedIn. And so, I've talked to a number of other coaches about that. And I think often, especially for those who are struggling a bit with putting themselves out there or what to post or finding the perfect post, right? There's a lot of people I talk to, other coaches or people running other businesses that it is a struggle. And I think the big piece I tell them is find one thing. Right. It's a step at a time. Find one thing they're confident in, feel strongly about. Maybe it's a story. Maybe it's, something they're just passionate about, and get out there and write up 3 posts about it and start putting that up there. They keep it short and sweet. They can make it a little longer if they want, but just get something up there and let it be. And I think when we post content, it feels like we're putting ourselves into it. And it is a very vulnerable thing to do. There's good news and bad news because yes, you're putting it up there for the world to see. 3 weeks later, everybody's going to forget about it anyways because they've seen hundreds of other posts, right? And I think it's actually a fairly low stakes effort to be able to do. And so again, with other coaches that are out there, I think just take that step, find one thing, put it up there. You're going to feel a lot better after you do. For myself, I 2 years ago, I'd never posted on LinkedIn ever before. And absolutely scared. Yes, it was scared to do so. It was played around and kind of got similar advice and played around 2-3 posts around collaboration. That was something I felt strongly about. And then towards the end of the year, kind of posted my stories. The first time I talked about the layoff, I was talking about my transition into kind of this new career. Ended up being a bit of a longer post, very vulnerable, and just got so much support by doing so. And that's what really propelled me forward to say, oh, okay, you know what? People want to hear more of my story. People want to really connect with that. And once you get past those first couple steps of just getting up there, I think this is part of the piece that you have to realize as a coach of this is a business. And to be able to support and grow your business. And it's easier coming from somebody who has a marketing background. I get that. But to really be able to grow and support your business, you have to put yourself out there. So mentioned 2 things. That's one. The other is about a year and a half, I started my own podcast. And really it's about self and team leadership. So take a number of topics around those, bring on guests for the most part, and dive into different topics that are very current, very, challenges and opportunities people are dealing with today. And again, from a branding standpoint, that's been incredibly effective. And so what I've been able to do is build a brand that is something that people are seeing, people are being exposed to. I'm posting about it on LinkedIn as well. So people are getting the exposure to that and seeing what this brand, this company is about. And it's, the podcast is exactly like I was mentioning, like self and team leadership, exactly what my business is about. And so people are attaching those together and getting the benefit from that as I grow my business, into, really what this perception of the business is looking to be about. So those are 2 big ways. And then kind of more directly to your question, I think from where I'm marketing myself, those are the 2 aspects I am. And then on top of that, it's really getting referrals. It's asking for those referrals from friends, from clients, all of that. And then a lot of my outreach is people seeing me post, usually first, second degree connections and reaching out to me. So again, LinkedIn, and happy, anybody that wants to follow me there. And then the podcast that you mentioned, the intro, the Sync Leadership Lab, leadership podcast for, I'm sure coaches would be interested as well.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing out a good point that, like putting yourself out there is so important too. And it's just that worry initially of going there for the first time?
Yeah.
It's like when you're thinking about it, who's gonna, you were worried that people you know
Yeah.
are gonna watch it, right? That's the
Yeah.
only worry. They might talk about it once in a dinner and that's it. And they might
I'll
talk
talk
about
about it once. Yeah. Hopefully they talked about it once a day. That's kind of the goal. Right. And I think it's, and this is where I made a comment earlier, which I think is really important. Of a lot of the coaches you talk to have their own coaches. And I think that's a really important piece from many angles. And this is one of them because I think where you can really understand what your driving purpose is. And I think working with a coach is a great way to find that. And then be able to speak from that place, you're going to come across genuine. And also in a world of AI where a lot of what you see on LinkedIn are just AI driven messages, these personal, vulnerable, just honest, purpose driven posts are the ones that are standing out nowadays and are the ones that are getting engagement. And that's where I encourage people, just share a little bit of your story, share what's purposeful for you, and understand what your goal is for your first post or your first few posts. And honestly, the goal is just putting it up there. That's it. Like you hit post and you've won.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter any engagement, doesn't matter anything else.
Yeah.
And the other piece, by the way, again, especially for a lot of coaches, if you haven't talked about your coaching on LinkedIn, just going up there and talking about how you're doing now and why you're doing it, people love that. And in and of itself can get some good engagement and could get a client or two just off of that.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So now with your coaching business, looking to the future for the next 1 to 3 years, do you have any specific goals business goals that you're working towards?
Yeah. So we're kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier of a lot of my early business was one-on-one clients. I wanted to just dive in, get the experience, truly coaching. As I went through my curriculum throughout much of last year, I kind of spaced it out to get the experience as I went along. My goal was just to become a good and better coach. Get good rhythms, start to develop that experience. As I came into this year, it's working with more companies. So had some previous corporate clients really diving in and growing my corporate client business. And that's my goal as I'm building that out. I'm not looking to have $1 million business. In fact, that's really not what I'm targeting towards. What I'm looking to do is do the work I absolutely love doing and make a living doing so. And when I get to partner with others, great. When I get to explore different things, try different things out, great. So what I'm looking for in the next 2 to 3 years, just continuing to grow my business. I'm not there yet. I'm not where I want to be yet. So continuing to grow that business and make this sustainable. And at the end of the day, my goal is to really just help as many people out there in a meaningful way.
Cool. And when you say working with companies, as I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm not a coach myself. I don't do coaching. So what is the approach of working with companies? What is the difference of working with individuals and working with companies? Is there just like a different type of outreach, or how would you? And actually, the better question is why?
Those are two different things, right? So I think part of the why is there's two parts of the why, to be honest with you. And I'll be totally transparent. So the first part is give you a quick story. I was about a year ago. I took my daughter down to the beach. We were just sitting on the beach. We both just needed like an hour. I'm in Southern California, so the beach isn't too far. I needed just like an hour or two just to kind of go unwind a little bit, relax. I took Simon Sinek's second book about why. And in there, he talks about how can you empower others to make a difference with people even past that. And what that inspired me to do, and the pie in the sky idea was, wow, what if I could impact thousands of people over the next 10 to 20 years and have that effect that just ripples down from there by coaching leaders, by going in with these companies. If I can coach a group of leaders, they're impacting others. Those others will be leaders in the future as well. So hopefully they get these, kind of get that positive ripple effect. Like I could truly, I'm not really looking for legacy, but at the same time, what if I could leave the world behind with better leadership in the corporate world? Because I've experienced a lot of really bad leadership and maybe not so good leadership. But what if I can get out there and I can influence people that influence other people and it impacts them on a day-to-day basis? And that's the really powerful thing to me. So, the Simon Sinek approach and sparked idea is really about making the biggest impact. I think companies can help me do that. The other piece, and being really honest about it, is companies pay more. If I want to make this a real full-time thing, scale this up, especially in the short term, coaches I've talked to have been doing this 10 plus years, can charge people one-on-one or companies quite a bit and do quite well. As I look at you talk about like 2-3 years, as I look at my next 2-3 years, I need my business to be about half corporate business, half individual business to be really where I want to be financially. As a proper former business school student, I've modeled this out and played with spreadsheets. And that is honestly part of the reason as well, because there's the financial aspect. And at the same time, I really appreciate and enjoy working with the people that are the ones hiring me out of their pocket because they are personally invested. And there's often a different drive that comes with that as well. So I do want to maintain that balance between the two.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, now that you explained it. One thing that we've learned through our last year's research, because we did this research also, last year, is when thinking about investments, we were analyzing what were good investments and what in terms of ROI and what were not so good investments or potentially even bad investments. The investment that turned out to have the lowest return on investment, because it was also a considerable investment, was the certifications that coaches were doing. Now, in your case, because there's two cases, if you're working with individuals, it turned out to be not such a good investment. But if you're working with companies, it actually started to pay off because some companies did require coaches to have a certain certification in order to vet them in. In your case, do you think certifications are going to play a big role and actually focusing with companies? Have you seen that so far?
So it's a really good question. It's something that I've actually been debating ever since I've been on this journey. What I've come to is, so I do not currently have a certification. I went through the CTI curriculum. I mentioned earlier that I think is a phenomenal opportunity to learn in and of itself, also not cheap. Right? There is a financial investment there. There's an energy investment as well. But I think an amazing program, and I met a lot of incredible people. Both have been really helpful for me as I build out this coaching business and made me significantly better coach. So I think the training in and of itself, finding the right training program, and I can speak, to the Coactive Training Institute, I don't think I could be truly making the impact I am today without that program. So that's one piece. Your question about certification, the way I see it is, I think you described it right, pretty accurately. Not a single one-on-one client has asked me if I'm certified. And I'm upfront about it as well, telling them I'm not, but what I have done from a training perspective. So the one-on-one business, I think you can easily establish a successful one-on-one practice without it. When you start talking about larger companies, a lot of larger, call it Fortune 500 companies, one, require it, and two, often work with agencies because they're not hiring coaches individually one by one either, but the agencies then require it. So if that's what your objective is, then it makes sense. For me, what my target is kind of small to medium-sized businesses where I can get into some of the larger companies. Great. That's a bonus. But small to medium-sized companies, and I think that's where I'm looking. And from what I've experienced, most of them have not asked about certification and either don't know, don't understand, or don't care about it. And so that's my approach. Also for me, in my situation is I have an MBA, I have 20 years of corporate experience. That's a bit of the credibility that I come to the table with. And that's why I think this is a very individual situation. If somebody feels like they don't have the resume, so to speak, or they don't have that credibility built up yet, certification is a great thing to add on. And there's different options for certification, whether it's going directly to ICF, going through, if you do the CTI curriculum, you can do the CTI certification, which is an incredible experience as well from the friends that I know have done it. So it's a personal decision. I will say I've been flirting with the ICF certification. It's something I do plan to do where it fits in. But right now, I'm hyper focused on growing my business.
And when you say small to medium businesses, do you mean like anywhere from 50 to 100 to 500 people, employees in the business side?
I kind of size it from like approximately, probably $1 to $2 billion revenue companies and down. So there might be still a few thousand people there, but they're not so established that they have all their systems, all their vendors, all that stuff figured out. There's still opportunities as they're figuring all that out. And especially growing companies. I see a lot of that. The growing companies, usually they grow, face the problem, and then find the support to fix the problem. Versus the Fortune 500 companies have done the growing, face the problems, brought in the people they want. And they're a lot more established. It's a lot harder to get into those.
What about other investments? Since this is something you might consider in the future, what have been some investments that you'd say are good investments that you learned a lot from? You mentioned the CDI or got a good return from? And what have been investments that you would have preferred to have avoided if there's any of those two?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two different ways because I think there's financial investments and there's kind of time and energy investments. Financial investments, I have not made a whole lot. One that I did is a program called Empower. And there's a coach by the name of Ann Farrell who had a successful corporate career, successful business she launched in helping other coaches, had a corporate career, launched her own coaching business, and then is now supporting others. I took her course all about building coaching business, and she's got a kind of process procedure that she swears by, has seen work for herself and for others.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, for me, that was a good investment. I don't follow it to the T. Most things I don't follow to the T, but I took out of it a number of really key takeaways that I've been putting into place and implementing. So as far as financial investments, besides CTI, that is the one other place I've invested that's been impactful. From a time and energy standpoint, I think this is the big thing, especially for coaches doing it full time, because you've got, right now you sit there, you have a whole week ahead of you or the rest of the week ahead of you. How are you spending your time? And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is we have a tendency, and this is human tendency, to do what's easier. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So for myself, I reflected and looked at where I'm spending my time and said, wow, I'm doing a lot of marketing work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's in the podcast, a lot of it's in posts, a lot of it's in these different ways to market myself because that's what's comfortable for me as a former marketer. That being said, what I'm not spending enough time on is sales. That's harder for me. I'm not a salesperson. I was a marketer. So this year I've made that adjustment. Okay, I need to spend the more time and energy on the sales side of it, be more strategic about it, really set that up and spend more time, spend more energy really driving the sales side of this. And that's how I'm going to grow the business. And I've seen some of that impact already. Again, I think there are certain places where financial investments make sense. The hard part on that side is there's a lot of noise, right? I get outreaches every other day from somebody that is going to grow my business tenfold and make me, $50,000 a month and whatever else, which, I don't believe most of it. It is a lot of noise. And this is where finding the people out there that are credible, finding the referrals, even, getting in touch with you was a colleague of mine that reached out and said, hey, I talked to Rexhen and, so Matthew Adam, I know you had him on the podcast a few months ago. And, referrals go a long way because again, there's so much noise out there.
Actually, and even in marketing, like referral network has been always big for coaches since starting out, and it grows bigger as you continue in this industry. So when you say you want to work more in sales, and this connects back to my other question is, when it comes to challenges that you're facing right now in your coaching business, what would you say are some of the main challenges or bottlenecks?
Yeah. So I think one thing that everybody's facing to some extent right now is some of the market challenges, right? I think we came into 2025 expecting there to be some stability and certainty, and there wasn't, right? Things were kind of shaken up, and whether that's tariff related, whether otherwise related, there's a lot of things that have not been stable. And I think companies reacting to that, anytime companies see uncertainty and instability, they kind of hold things tighter. So even though we see the stock market going up, I think we see a lot of downsizing, we see a lot of budget constraints because of that uncertainty. So that's one big challenge we're all dealing with, because that discretionary spend, and at the end of the day, it shouldn't be, but we're unfortunately seen as discretionary spend a lot of times. So that discretionary spend is tight, and so that market challenge is there. Obviously, only so much we can do with that. That being said, other challenges is just simply that I think that sales cycle, right? When I talk to individuals looking to hire me, I can have a conversation with them and they can say yes on the spot, or usually within about a week, they say yes, we get started the following week. That sales cycle is really small and a lot simpler. Working with companies, that sales cycle from just getting that person to respond to getting a conversation. This is even with contacts I have, getting conversation with the right person, making a proposal, and then getting the sale. That sales cycle can be a lot longer. And, I think just being dedicated, really investing the time in the right places. And that's all the pieces I'm currently learning. As well as I go through it, as that was a shift for this year. The payoff of that is obviously a lot higher. And what I'm looking for is also getting that sustainable business with that company. And so I've had some of the successes along the way, but those are some of the challenges that I'm facing right now.
Definitely. It does make a lot of sense. So yeah, with companies, it's most likely a longer sales journey and cycle for them to go through. So right now, you'd say that is kind of like the main challenge, the bottleneck for you right now. And sales, actually, it's interesting. It's not a challenge that comes up often for coaches, but in your case, I see because it's a transition area right now. So it's just part of figuring that process out. Now, I'm getting to the final question, which is for other coaches who are thinking of scaling their impact, for coaches who want to scale that impact, is there any advice you'd like to give to those coaches?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think starting with just really understand your purpose, right? So when I talk to some coaches out there that are just trying to do coaching, it's all over the place. It's not focused. Like all of that gets really difficult if you don't know truly what your purpose is and what you're trying to do. And that doesn't necessarily mean niche, right? I'm sure you have that conversation all the time. Some coaches are like, you have to niche. And some coaches like, you don't need to niche. And like, I'm going to put that conversation aside. I think it's really about finding your purpose and chasing after that. So I think there is an element of really find your purpose, lead with that, and things become much more clear. But by leading with purpose, it makes all the difference in the world and provides that clarity and confidence to go after it. So it's about just starting. Just take those first steps, put yourself out there. If one-on-one's more comfortable, get on people one-on-one, and then build up to doing it in a bigger way. And so a lot of people, a lot of coaches I've talked to that are just trying to get things started, again, lean on what they feel like they know, or feel like they have to be the perfect coach. And like, I can't start coaching until I go through training. Oh, now I can't start coaching until I go through certification. And, now I have my certification, like, okay, now I'm getting started. And that's not the way business works. You have to put yourself out there. You have to have the level of confidence and be honest with people. And I'll tell you early on when I was coaching, going to people and saying, hey, look, I'm early on in this, but this is my background and this is what I believe I can, support you with. Be honest about it. And they'll say yes or no, but it'll be eyes wide open. I think that makes a big difference. And then as you go forward of just getting that time, getting more clients, getting that experience is absolutely huge. Find what interests you. So one thing I spend a lot of time, when you talk about like the advice I give to myself, right? One thing I spend a lot of time on is there's a lot of people over the past few years that have entered the coaching space. There's tons of coaches. If you look on LinkedIn, millions, literally. I don't say that to discourage people, but I do say that to call out, how are you going to differentiate yourself? And again, it doesn't have to go down to niching, but how are you going to differentiate myself? One thing I've been working on lately is around how do I incorporate AI into what I do as a coach, right? And that gets into a little bit of a controversial topic, right? Because a lot of coaches really don't like AI because people are out there using AI like a coach. And so it's a threat. I view it entirely differently. I view it as, okay, AI can do some level of coaching. I've actually started using AI as a coach for certain things, and it's incredibly effective. And there's other things that AI will never be able to do. AI will never be able to sit on the other side of a screen or a table and truly, in all ways, coach somebody through some of their biggest challenges. It just can't do it. And so how do you marry those things together is, for me, the approach I'm taking is I can meet with a client once a week, once every other week, but what are they doing in between? And so now I'm starting to utilize AI with clients for that in between and really keep them on track to what we discuss. And then when I'm back on with them, I've got that hour with them to do what I can. And then again, set them on their way with the tool to support them through that. So again, find the ways, this is all to the point of find the ways to differentiate yourself, find the ways that you stand out. Some of it might be your background, your experience. So again, for myself, 20-year corporate career, I've done a lot of marketing. I lean on that. I talk about that often. I talk about my experiences often as a leader, having led multiple teams. This AI piece is another piece that I'm using to differentiate myself. So what package are you bringing to the table? Just stand out a little bit. And then again, I'll go back to tie your purpose to your differentiation, start talking about that on LinkedIn. And now you've got a story to tell that's a little bit different than most others out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Suken. Thank you so much for that great advice. And I totally agree with you. So yeah, thank you so much for today. For anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go into LinkedIn and look up Suken Jain. They'll be able to find your profile. And if they also want to find the website, is SynergySync Solutions.
Yes, exactly. And I'd say find me on LinkedIn. Most of my latest content and information about the podcast and everything's on there. So Suken is the first name, last name Jain. Happy for anybody to reach out and connect. And yeah, no, Rexhen, I really appreciate this opportunity to chat with you and hope this helps some of the other coaches and anybody else out there.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.